All right, good evening, everybody. So we're about to do a full system upgrade on everything you see behind me. So if you didn't see the teaser in the last video, I received a shipment recently of some new hardware. And it is basically a plug-and-play system that's going to allow us to step up our game a little bit. So by the time we get done swapping out our old inverters, and that's inverters, cabling, everything. By the time we get done swapping all that out, we're going to end up basically going from a tier 2 or a tier 3 system all the way up to a tier 1 system. So, Current Connected sent me their new 10 kVA system, which includes the brand new MultiPlus-II 5000VA inverter. So we're going to go through and do a quick unboxing of everything that came in the kit, and then we're going to go and look at getting everything swapped out. So hopefully by the end of this install, I'll be able to say go blue for a completely different reason than I normally would be able to. Those of you that live in Michigan will get the reference. Okay, so we've got on the table one of the MultiPlus-IIs, the 5 kVA box. These things are so big it's very hard to show you, but there you can see MultiPlus-II, 48 volt, 5 kVA, 70 amp. So this being a new product, I kind of wanted to open the box and show you what all is coming in the box. Now, Current Connected has already opened this box, and I believe they've gone through and pre-programmed the two inverters to talk together. You can see right here they put a big L1 on this box, so this should be for leg 1, and then the other box has leg 2. So we're going to go ahead, open everything back up. And you saw a minute ago, there was a big crease down on the side. This box has had some abuse, but Victron does a very, very good job of packaging their inverters. So they've got a nice, big, thick chunk of foam along the top. And these pieces on the top slide right out very easy, and there's our beautiful blue inverter. All packaged up, nice and neat. So let's pop this thing out of the box. And this thing's gonna be heavy. This thing is, I think it's 20 pounds heavier than the 6500s. And you can feel it. The toroidal transformer right here. So let's see how easy it's gonna be to get this thing out. Holy cow, this thing's heavy. In the box, it also comes with a little bag of goodies. You've got a temperature sensor, your wall bracket. Boy, I am so looking forward to using a wall bracket to hang this as opposed to having to hang on the little lips of the 6500s. Quick install guide. I believe there's some safety stickers, which looks like Current Connected put one in already. Some screws, and a little pamphlet on additional things you can buy. So we'll put this off to the side. I can't even get this thing in frame. If I turn it sideways, there you go. Nice blue look. So again, this is the MultiPlus-II 48 volt 5000VA or 5 kVA 70 amp with an AC transfer capacity of 95 amps, and it's a 120 volt unit. So you have to use 2 of these for split phase. So looking at the bottom here, we've got 3 different style cable glands, because normally I remember seeing in all the old units, they have all these multi-sized fittings to where you basically cut the size that you need for your cable to slide through. But they've got these larger sizes on here now for the AC side. I believe this all has to do with, and including the way that this hexagon pattern is down here, I believe that all has to do with the UL 1741 compliance. Now this is not UL 1741 certified as of yet. It is pending right now. When I hear anything that changes, I'll let you know. But this is a big fitting on the bottom. I believe these are 3/4 inch and this might be 1 inch. But let's take a peek on the inside. So I believe we just take out these 2 screws down here on the bottom. And already this is so much easier to deal with than the 6500s. 2 screws, slide up and out. So we can see here that Current Connected has made changes to it. They've updated to the latest firmware, which again is not typical from companies that sell inverters. They don't go through and prep these things for you. So that's a huge plus to know that you're getting the latest firmware and the pre-programmed version. Set that off to the side. So looking at the inside, they went back and boy, they've got some beefy connections that you can have down in here. I want to say these can handle up to 2 gauge wire now. But your AC out 1 and AC out 2, your AC in, you've got an auxiliary relay, a grounding stud, a remote on and off. You've got 2 connections for your VE bus, which we'll get into later. You can have external current sensors, which this changed as well. This used to be like your 1/8 inch headphone jack, but I guess they had problems with the connection getting looser over time. And so they switched back to this terminal block style connection. And then you've got 2 additional terminal blocks here, which I like these because being able to pull these out and wire your connections into here and then just slide them in makes things so much simpler. So you can see we've got some external ground, some auxiliary, and then the one down here is it looks like a voltage and temperature sense wires. And then when you end up getting them wired in, you just click them back in place. And then we've got our positive and negative battery connection. When you get your mounting plate on the wall and you get this hung, you've got 2 additional holes down here that will secure the inverter to the wall once it's on the mounting plate. And another big difference about this inverter between this and the 6500 is the MultiPluses and even the Quattros don't have displays built into them. You know, you've got your indicator lights but no display, and that's where another part of the package comes into play, and we'll get to that later, that gives you even more control, and it's a whole lot easier to look at and understand than the displays on the 6500s. So from what it looks like, you got 2 screws underneath here, and then I see 3 along the side. So let's see if we can pop this top off and take a peek on the inside. And these screws are much bigger than even the screws that were down here. There's 2 more. And you should never have to get into this top section. I just kind of want to show you what we've got here. Look at this massive monster. I mean, look, there's my hand. My hand is smaller than this entire transformer. But the entire upper section of this thing, there's not much to this at all. I'm sure somebody knows more about what we're looking at here than I do, but it's just massive. and one fan. We'll find out how the fan compares to the 6500s. That's something I'm really looking forward to. But I'm kind of dumbfounded at the simplicity on the inside of this unit. You've got one master board along the bottom, and then you've got, what, two little daughter boards coming off, and that's it. Very sweet. And there's only the one little ribbon cable, which connects right to here when I pulled the cover off. So a grand total of 10 screws, 10 decent sized screws that I am not gonna strip the head out every time I have to take them off. It does seem that if you want to get this lid seated back exactly the way that it came, you kind of need to seat the bottom side first and then hinge the top side down. That should allow your holes to get lined directly back up with where they were before. Put everything back together so that it's ready for when we do the mounting on the wall. Oh, I didn't even notice this. So on the back of the faceplate, it gives you a breakdown of different connections. That's slick, because then you don't have to run and find the manual each time. It talks about your ground relay, how to connect the different terminal blocks. Very cool. And another plus, these screws in the faceplate, they don't come out. So you're not going to lose them. So the last box contains a huge assortment of all the additional parts and pieces and accessories that come with the 10 kVA kit. So we've got a pair of 1/0 Windy Nation welding cable with 5/16 lugs, and we've got a 4-foot pair and a 5-foot pair, and those are going to be for your inverter connections and I believe your charge controller connections to the bus bars. We have a Lynx shunt in here with reversible sticker if you need to mount it upside down. Quick install guide. We have a Lynx power in. This will be for all your power coming from your batteries. The Lynx distributor, which is going to be for all of your inverter connections and your charge controller connections. This is the Serbo GX touchscreen. This was what I was talking about earlier with being able to have all of the data information at your fingertips. I've got a wall mount a wall mount kit for the display. Mega fuses for the inverter and charge controller connections. And then this mega fuse goes into the shunt. And it's a master fuse basically between your batteries and your charge controller and your inverters. Data communication cables between your different devices. So you're going to have, let's see, a couple of 6-footers. Looks like they're all 4 6-footers. So communication between your inverters, inverter to inverter. You've got inverter to servo. You've got your shunt to your servo. And then you've got your charge controller to your servo. We've got a koozie, current connected. That's slick. Have to throw a can of Coke in there. And last but certainly not least, the brains of the operation, the servo itself. So we've got some different terminal blocks, some terminators, power connection. So all in all, not a whole lot. I mean, we're talking, you got one box of miscellaneous stuff, and then you've got your 2 inverters, and by the time we get done, we're gonna have a fairly plug-and-play system that should be a whole lot more stable and reliable than our last one. It's so quiet in here when you shut everything down. Well, it's another new day, and I went through and spared you from all the boring footage of me taking everything off the walls. And I've gone through and removed all the inverters and all the components off the wall from the old 6500 build. It actually took, what, 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours to get everything down. And then I ended up spending quite a bit of time just staring at the wall, looking at it. How's it gonna go? What goes where? And there's a whole lot to it. Because if you're like me, you don't have a lot of space to work with. I mean, what you can basically see, the panel that is right over here, if I have to move it, I've only got a little bit of playroom. But then even over to here, I'm very limited on wall space. And you need to keep your proper spacing between your different components to allow for proper ventilation and cooling. And so I know that I only have so much space to work with. So what I ended up doing was I ended up cutting out templates of the different components and trying to figure out proper spacing of where everything's going to go. And obviously, you know, things will get straightened out. This is just for example purposes, but another tool that has been invaluable is this little laser level. So I just get my height exactly where I need it to be. And actually the current laser is set for the top of the brackets for these 2 inverters. So the bracket's going to be right up against the top of that, and then here's the proper spacing. So the bracket's going to go right in here on both of these. But yeah, it's made things a whole lot simpler than me having to fight with the 4-foot or the 7-foot level that I had to with the 6500s, because that was just a nightmare trying to finagle everything across. So really the next big thing is get the brackets mounted, and then we can hang the inverters and then start wiring up. All right, we've got our first bracket up. Oh, it's so nice being able to just put a bracket on and then set the unit on instead of having to guess, really. It just makes things so much simpler. And then I also got the holes drilled for the lower mount points. So let's go get the charge controller, hang her up, and get it hooked into the wall. And it's got teeth in it. So really, you just slide it back and forth until you feel those teeth drop in. We take our 2 concrete screws. There we go. That thing's not going anywhere. And I do believe if you don't use the bracket, I think you can take this upper section off, and there's actually 2 more mount points about here and here underneath this top cover if you do have a need to not use that mounting bracket, so you're needing to mount it in a different orientation. But for me, bracket works awesome. So we've got 1 more here and 1 more here to get drilled up. All right, we got the bracket mounted for our phase 2 inverter. We also got our lower holes drilled. And the comment was made that we should probably video how big of a pain in the butt this is to actually hang on the wall. Now, part of it is due to my issue of this thing being right in the way. If this was not here, it would probably be a whole lot easier. And we will have to move this to put our phase 1 inverter up. But for the time being, enjoy the show. All right, so how did we do this last time? I don't remember.
Pick this up.
I think I had to hold the whole thing, right?
You kind of get under it. Fingers. Yep.
And don't step on all the stuff on the floor.
Trying not to. Got it?
Oops, daisy. Did it actually go in? I don't know. Where's my, it's on my lines. Oh, it's actually going in. Huh, okay, I'll take it. Apparently there was dust or something covering the hole. That was heavy. I think the biggest problem is just all the weight's up high. So if you're going to mount this thing up, you know, above head height really, you just have to be aware of the fact that all that weight's going to be above your head. This was nothing. This one, a little bit more. Okay, so we've got the other bracket mounted for the other inverter, and we've kind of discovered a better way of hanging the inverter, which doesn't involve 2 people climbing on top of each other in order to get it on the wall. So when we pre-hung it to get our holes drilled for the bottom mounting points, we figured it out. It was a whole lot easier, so we kind of wanted to share this little tip on getting this mounted. Now again, this is very top heavy, so you really want 2 people, and we'll show you how we did it, or at least the second way of how we did it. Each person having a hand on the top, and each person having a hand just inside the wiring compartment. And there goes our tiny little level.
I think it is go your way a little bit. Keep going. There we go.
And then you basically just go left to right to find it, lock into that groove, and check your level and hope that you are exactly where you need to be. Find your holes and so much easier, so much better. I've spent the last several days having to rewire a lot of the paneling over here. I'm adding a manual transfer switch and everything, but I needed the proper spacing. And I did not have that because the electrical panel was almost right on top of this inverter. Because you got to remember, from the 6500 standpoint, I only had 2 devices up on the wall, and they did everything. I've got 3 now, which is a much wider footprint. And so I had to move stuff over, and in order to move stuff to rewire, it was just a lot of tedious work, lengthening wires and getting everything done, and it's still not quite done yet. I have to pick up some more electrical staples and stuff like that. It's definitely a different look. And I used to see another blue behind me. So these are much taller than the 6500s. So your height on these, if you're going down to the bottom of these glands, then you're talking 28 inches. Your depth on these is 6 inches, and your width on these is 12 3/4 inches. Stuff has to get shifted down, stuff had to get shifted to the side to get these to fit. And then you've got your charge controller, which the charge controller, I think I mentioned this before, but the charge controller is not a part of the 10 kVA kit. You get that separate. But you've got to have 12 inches of vertical clearance on the charge controller and 12 inches of clearance down here. And I've got just enough clearance up behind this trunk, which you might be able to see in the camera. You've got to have 4 inches of clearance on either side all the way around for the inverters. And one last big thing about this version of the inverter is just the massive wiring space that you have to work with. I mean, you're talking 8 inches of wiring space down in here. That's huge. So having more playroom in here is going to be very nice. Now, you've heard me mention several times, these are 5 kVA units. 5,000 volt amps, I think is what it is. All inverters have a kVA rating. Even the 6500s, they have a 6500 kVA rating. The watt rating is typically less than the kVA rating. And I'm going to try and explain a little bit from my limited understanding. And I know somebody's going to correct me on this, but from my limited understanding, you can max your kVA rating, so 5,000 VA. You could have 5,000 watts of output if you have a power factor of 1. And power factor, I believe, is like usable power versus actual power, I think. If you end up having resistive loads, all resistive loads, you can use about 5,000 watts of power. But the inductive loads, the motors, the startup motors like that, they have a lower power factor. And again, I'm reiterating what I have read. I don't still have a very good grasp on it, but they rate these units at 5,000 VA, and then they derate to 80% power factor for a standard output. So the standard output on these is 400 watts, assuming you're using inductive loads and that kind of stuff. And then the surge or peak, it might be peak, is 9,000 watts. So with these being only 4,000 watt units, between the two, you know, I've got 8,000 watts of potential power with the peak and the surge. And these having toroidal transformers in them, I'm really hoping to see that the surge, because I don't run a ton of power all the time. So I want to see if these inverters with their surge capability and their peak capability can handle all the loads that I've been having without having to pull anything and move it back over to the grid. Worst comes to worst, I have to look at getting another set of these to basically bump my power up to 20 kVA, and that would be, what, 16,000 watts of power, to where I know that that would be more than sufficient. But I want to see if these are basically just an easy swap for the 6500s. And then my goal is to try and go through a lot of these other tests that I've had with the 6500s, run all these different go through all the different issues that I have had and see, do they happen on these too? Because that's going to be very interesting to see. Can these start the air conditioner without the soft start? Because I haven't put that in yet. I haven't gotten one yet. Can I put the dimmer back in the kitchen? That's going to be awesome. Do I have lights blinking and flickering when different loads kick in? My well, I just heard my well kick in, and normally I would see the lights go, 5 blinks. And I'd know, okay, one of the big loads kicked in. I really shouldn't see any more charging issues with PV, because the charge controller is completely isolated from the inverters themselves. The charge controller is going to be tied directly to the battery, and that's where it's just going to dump its power. So it never fails as you're going through and making a video, you always forget to talk about something. And I wanted to do kind of a full system recap of the entire kit that I received. So it is a 10 kVA 120/240 MultiPlus-II kit. And so this kit includes 2 of the Victron 48V MultiPlus-II 5kVA units that are 120 volt units set up in split phase, and each has a 70 amp charger. It contains a Victron Serbo GX, the GX touchscreen and wall mount bracket, 2 1/0 pure copper battery cables, a Victron Lynx distributor, a power in, and a Victron Lynx shunt. You also have fuses for your distributor and your Lynx shunt, as well as 3 Cat 5e patch cables that are 6 foot in length. And this entire kit is a 10,000 VA continuous output kit. It is pre-configured by current connected for 120/240 split phase, and you can always add additional inverters and stack more for additional output. Now the MultiPlus-II inverters themselves are 5 kVA apiece. They are built with a toroidal transformer which is 96% efficient, and they have an unprecedented 15 watt idle capacity. These inverters also come with a 5-year manufacturer warranty and a 5-year current connected extended warranty, which gives you a total of 10 years for a warranty on your inverters, which is amazing. It also has a 70 amp battery charger with a 50 amp feed-through current. You can stack up to 6 units for increased power output. And it also has a whole lot more additional advanced inverting features that you might not see in other inverters. I want to wrap this one up because I know it's gone long already. In the next one, which I'm going to continue working on that right now, but in the next one I'm going to look at getting the wiring the trough all put in, because I've got an upgraded trough that I'm going to put in, get all my conduits cut for the inverters, and then see if we can get some wiring run, because as of right now I've been on grid power for the last week, and it's driving me nuts because I'm seeing a lot of these sunny potential days getting flushed down the drain because I can't use any solar right now because it's all shut down. So I'm extremely excited to see how well these perform. They're new to the market, and I'm happy to be one of the first ones to really get a hand on them and get to run them through their paces, at least from current connected. So with that, I'll let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, stay cool, and we'll catch up with you later.